Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time.
So, let's talk about the phrase conspiracy theory. You've heard it a million times, right? It's usually the end of a conversation, a total shutdown. But what if that's the whole point? What if that term isn't just a description, but a weapon? In this explainer, we're going to unpack how it's used as a political tool to decide who gets a voice and who gets silenced.
All right, so our guide for this is Tim Aistrope's book, Conspiracy Theory and American Foreign Policy. And he looks at all this through a really specific, high-stakes moment in time, the post-9/11 War on Terror. I mean, that was an era when everything was about secrecy, who you could trust, and what was actually true, right? And this gets us right to the heart of the book's big question, and it's a real head-scratcher. Look, conspiracies are, well, they're common. Governments plot in secret. Spy agencies run covert operations. Heck, terrorism is a conspiracy. That's just how the world works. So why then is being a conspiracy theorist such a bad thing? And maybe more importantly, who gets to decide which secret plan is just good policy and which one is paranoid fantasy? Okay, so first up, let's talk about what the book calls authorized secrecy. This is basically when the state conspires. I mean, think about it for a second. Governments and their agencies are plotting in secret all the time, but we have different words for it, right? We call it governance, espionage, national security. It's all perfectly normal, perfectly rational.
And a prime example of this is the official narrative of 9/11. I mean, the story itself is a conspiracy narrative. You can see how it unfolds here. You start with known al-Qaeda plots against the U.S., then the September 11th attack is identified as a huge coordinated conspiracy. And where does it all lead? To the justification for the war in Iraq, which was built on another set of claims about a secret conspiracy.
And these claims were incredibly specific. We were told that Iraq was secretly trying to buy yellow cake uranium, that they were importing special aluminum tubes for centrifuges, that they had these mobile weapons labs to fool inspectors, and that they were even having secret meetings with al-Qaeda. This was the official story, the authorized version of events. But here's the kicker, the really crucial point. All of these were claims about a secret plot, but you never, ever heard them called conspiracy theories. Not once. They were presented as cold, hard facts, as authoritative intelligence. And this was the case even though we found out later that, well, they weren't true. Okay, so that's one side of the coin. But what happens when the public starts asking questions? When people are skeptical? Well, that brings us to the flip side, what the book calls delegitimized suspicion. This is where any view that questions the official story gets systematically shut down. Just look at this contrast. It's pretty stark. In one corner, you have the official government claim, Iraq is secretly building WMDs. That was treated as fact, even though it turned out to be false. And in the other corner, you have people being skeptical, wondering if maybe the US had its own hidden motives. Now that view, which was often based on decades of actual history, was just brushed aside, labeled a conspiracy theory.
So, how did they do it? How did they shut down that skepticism? Well, you had influential voices who didn't really argue the facts. Instead, they reframed the whole debate. The skepticism wasn't a valid political critique. It was a psychological problem, a deep cultural chasm between a rational us and an irrational them.
This is a really powerful mechanism. It's called pathologizing dissent. You take a legitimate concern and you label it as a sickness, irrational paranoia. You link it to things like anti-Americanism or even deep-seated psychological issues like self-loathing. It even got to the point where entire cultures were painted with this brush, told they were just naturally conspiracy-minded. And if you do that, you don't have to listen to a word they say, do you? So all of this massive double standard, it begs the question, how does this actually work? The book offers a really powerful metaphor to explain it. Think of it like a locked room of power. And inside that room, that's where the decisions get made about what's rational and what's not. Because at the end of the day, the difference between an accepted fact and a dismissed theory isn't really about the evidence, it's about authority. It all comes down to who is speaking and whether they have the power to make their version of the story the official one.
And that brings us back to this idea of the locked room. Picture it. All important political debate happens inside this one room, but the door's locked, and only a select few have the key to get in. So the real question isn't what's true. The real question is who's even allowed in the room to speak in the first place? Who gets to be heard?
So let's break that down.
Inside the room, you've got your government officials, your policy experts. What's their evidence? Oh, it's classified intelligence. Can't see it. And what are their claims called? National security facts. Now, outside the room, you have critics, the public. Their evidence is stuff that's publicly available. History, past actions, and their claims, you guessed it, they get slapped with the label paranoid conspiracy theory. So you see, it's not about what is being said, it's about who is saying.
Once you start thinking about this locked room idea, it really changes how you see public debates, doesn't it? Especially today, with everything being so polarized. It gives you a whole new lens to understand the relationship between truth, trust, and power.
So let's try a new definition. The label conspiracy theory isn't just a neutral way to describe a strange idea. No way. It's a political tool. Its job is to draw a line in the sand, to police the boundaries of acceptable conversation. It's a tool to shut down any knowledge that comes from outside that locked room of power.
And as the scholar Jack Brodich points out, there's something else happening too. When someone in power calls an idea paranoid, they're not just attacking that idea. They're also, at the same time, defining their own ideas as normal and rational. It's a clever way to make themselves the default voice of reason.
So, what's the big takeaway here? It's this. The next time you hear someone dismiss an idea as just another conspiracy theory, just stop for a second. The first question doesn't have to be, is this true or false? Instead, try asking a different question, a much more powerful one. Who does this label actually serve? Who wins when this conversation gets shut down?
For the full long-form deep dive into this book and its ideas, follow the link in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.